Well, the business of Super Bowl 59 is in full swing down in the Big Easy. And here to talk all things NFL media is Hans Schroeder, the NFL's Executive Vice President of Media Distribution. Hans, you're a busy man in New Orleans this week, so we really appreciate you jumping on the SBJ Sports Media Podcast.
No, thanks for having me. It's an exciting time of year for us. Obviously, you hear the saying for a lot of companies, it's your Super Bowl. Well, this is our Super Bowl, and so we're incredibly excited to be here in New Orleans. A great matchup, and as a city that does the Super Bowl maybe like no other, it's great to be back here and in the community, especially after everything that happened back in early January. It's hopefully we could be help a big part of revitalizing and sort of bringing New Orleans back to the great city that it is. So we're excited to be here.
We'll get to some talk on Chiefs and Eagles, but I want to work back a little bit and talk about some regular season playoff viewership. Historically, you had what was a really strong regular season, down a touch from 2023 on the regular season side. And the wild card divisional round, also a little bit lower, got a really big record AFC championship number out of that really close Chiefs-Bills game. Given the slightly lower viewership numbers this year, how have you and everyone at NFL headquarters viewed the numbers from this season?
Well, probably similar to many other businesses, certainly viewership is never a straight line, but we're really focused about how we continue to grow engagement with our fans. That's a key metric for us. And, this year, I think there are a lot of great positives overall. And, from an overall perspective, it's one of our highest viewed seasons ever. So at an absolute level, tremendous. At a relative level, down a tick from last year. But you still look across partners and you see the growth, the continued great season that CBS had again, where you see really some of the benefits of our new flexibility we have with how we create schedules and being able to really put and have greater flexibility to put any game in any window. I think you see that really manifesting itself across the schedule. You saw a great year across Thursday night football. NBC was up just a touch, another great year on Sunday night. Fox had it was down just a tick. And then ESPN was a unique one. It's, ESPN obviously last year with the combination of writers and actors strikes had simulcasted every game on ABC. We sort of knew going in this year when they weren't taking that approach that there'd be some impact to that. But I think still a great season across Monday Night Football. So continued growth on Sunday Ticket, continued growth on Red Zone. You look across, as we do, across the entire ecosystem, and that's what we're really focused on. And we see a lot of real positives, a lot of sort of younger audiences that we're reaching, particularly on some of the digital platforms, some of the new innovation with the alt broadcasts. What we did this year with The Simpsons and the EA and Madden cast were tremendously exciting. And I think we're just scratching the surface there. So a really successful year and then a great postseason run. Look, that's always going to be some ups and downs, some things move around. Another really exciting, race through the playoffs and to a great Super Bowl matchup as we're sitting here again with Kansas City, Philly, 2 years later from when they played it the first time. Excited to see how they run it back on Sunday.
Right, well, Hans, first of all, a preemptive congratulations to what will be the most watched telecast of 2025 with Sunday's game. And it's probably going to...
We're going out on a limb. Molly and I are going out on a limb with that one.
Yeah, but what would top it, though, Austin? We can talk about that later. It'll likely also be the only live telecast in the U.S. that's going to break 100 million viewers or come close. But do you think the Eagles-Chiefs on Sunday can break the Super Bowl record of the 123.7 million that was set last year?
Absolutely. There's so much going into it. You have the storyline of the three-peat. You have the success of Kansas City. I mean, Mahomes is about as iconic athlete as there is in the world with so much popularity, so much following. And then you have a Philly team with some really great storylines with Saquon coming on. They were just here in the rematch and fell just short 2 years ago. We're expecting a great game, and I absolutely think we can beat that number. And overall, I think it's going to be a great number regardless. So obviously a high watermark last year, but the game and all the dynamics leading into it on Sunday is certainly there for another record audience.
Hans, you discussed some of your streaming partners out there, and I want to drill a little deeper on that, just in the NFL strategy. You all have been very methodical over a very long time. Heck, I remember when you even had game streaming on Yahoo at one point. But now Netflix has games. Prime Video has an exclusive package there on Thursday night. You have ESPN Plus and Peacock in on the action. YouTube TV, like you mentioned, just wrapped year 2 of that Sunday Ticket out-of-market package. The Super Bowl is even going to be simulcast on Tubi on Sunday. So what is the guiding principle for the NFL today, 2025, in putting live game coverage on these various platforms?
It's really simple when you get down to it. We want to be on the screens and on the platforms where our fans are spending their time. And increasingly, we're very fortunate to have incredible partnerships across four broadcasters with ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox, for all partners. And the reach and the breadth of broadcast is still unparalleled. But you see that continued growth of digital, and you see the continued consumption patterns where fans are spending their time, particularly younger fans. And that's where we want to be. And that's a deliberate and focused approach that just is not over the last couple of years. You can go back 15 years when we carved rights out on mobile and we started to distribute our games on mobile, seeing what the impact and what the presence in everybody's life would be with their mobile phones and where younger people are consuming content. That was the first step. You talked about the Yahoo game we did, but we also started the TriCast model with Thursday, is starting to build that digital distribution. Then you saw what we did with Amazon and the continued growth there with TriCast, but led to that exclusive package back in 21 when we did the deals in the 22 season. And so as we think and look, we want to be very sensitive that our games are still in places that we're not spreading ourselves too wide. There is a view that we want to make sure fans know to where to go to find our games, but we also are recognizing the landscape's continuing to shift. And we're very proud and humbly proud of sort of the value and the ability of NFL games to draw unique audience sizes. And we want to be open to new partnerships when they come along. And so you mentioned Netflix. That's a great example of that, in that, we had originally developed our partnership there, principally around the show Quarterbacks, that led to the Receivers, and they saw that be a top 10 show in 16 countries around the world. And so when we announced last year we were going to play on Christmas and committed to do that going forward, and they reached out. They're into building big events. They're built into building big moments on a platform that's one of the top video platforms in the entire world and globally. When they reached out and presented that opportunity, we already know there's a ton of NFL fans on Netflix. So how do we reach them in a new and different way? And the interesting thing that was really the combination of Christmas was it's the NFL on Christmas on Netflix, which is their biggest day of the year. And to do that globally and for all our fans be able to say, hey, this is where you're going to be able to find the NFL on Christmas. That was a great and powerful combination. And so, look, we're going to be really selective, but as we look forward, we're very lucky. We have great existing partners and partners that have been our partners for a long time. But within our deals, we maintain game inventory so we can be flexible. So you mentioned that Yahoo example is in the last cycle of what we did. Originally we carved out Thursday Night Football and put that on NFL Network and played a full season of games on NFL Network. So how we deploy our game inventory and the strategic sort of ability to hold back some of that inventory and go on to new platforms and innovate in the midst of these longer deals, I think has been a big sort of priority for us. And I think it led to a lot of our success, especially on some of these new platforms where, change doesn't happen overnight, and sort of building that presence, building the infrastructure and the capability, particularly of something like digital, that, you need to be prepared to handle the 25 million viewers that showed up on Christmas Day. We want to continue to build those relationships. So as we look out, again, wherever our fans are spending their time, those are opportunities and going to be hopefully platforms that are ready and excited to approach us and be willing to partner with us for games going forward.
Obviously the NFL schedule is a huge deal each season. I'm not just talking about the schedule release. We all love seeing Titans fans, describe the Falcons as Red Stallions. But beyond that, and the actual business of the NFL schedule, how much are you and Roger Goodell and Brian Rolapp and others from the league being lobbied this week in New Orleans by networks and streamers looking for the best games next season?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I'm incredibly fortunate in that one of my mentors in my career who's been incredibly impactful to me is Howard Katz. And Howard singularly deserves a ton of credit, maybe for what he did over 20 plus years to advance the sophistication of how we attack and approach the schedule. And the work that goes into it is immense. And so for me to be able to work with Howard, for Howard, alongside him now, and to continue to have him as a mentor and take the baton from him and lead that scheduling process now for the league with Mike North, who has been right there with Howard, and now for me is really leading and driving this, and about as smart a person as you'll ever meet. And as a son of a coach and a football fan, it's a fun puzzle to solve. From a process standpoint, it's interesting. Like I tell Mike, it's sort of like my Christmas morning. the Monday after the regular season ends, he sends around a chart that we know all 272 games at that point. And that's really, we're always thinking about the schedule. That team, that broadcast and scheduling team, and Blake Jones and Ani Bose and Mike, Josh Helmrich, Lucy Popko, that team puts so much into it. And throughout the year, they're taking notes on next year. And so, the process really more formally kicks off the day the regular season ends when we know all those matchups, and that's when we start getting after it. We meet with all of our partners. You actually met with them all last week, the week before we headed down to New Orleans this week. So crazy. That's a better week for it. And we know all the matchups. We know what's important to them, what their view of games they're looking for and otherwise. And it's a great process. We're smarter with the more data and the more intel we get from our partners. It's a juggling act. We have multiple partners now, and trying to keep everybody happy is a juggling act. I think we've done a great job of it, and ultimately the ratings and the viewership, I think, prove that out with the length of our partnerships and the ability to continue to drive viewership as we're playing more games and more windows. That scheduling flexibility is key, but we look for all data and all information that can go into that process, and we challenge them to make us smarter, and they challenge us to make sure we're thinking about all the different considerations that go into that process. And so we'll come out of New Orleans. It's not a marathon, it's not a sprint, it's somewhere in between where, it's like a miler. Like we're running fast for the next 4 months. Each month's a lap, I guess. And so we're head down, sort of really pacing and driving on that over the next 4 months. But it's exciting. It's an incredibly exciting process, and it's at the core of what the league is. So, and by the way, the other big thing is clubs. We get a lot of really helpful and impactful feedback from clubs about what happened in their schedule. And we're looking at everything from travel to rest disparity to competitive to what you've done. Have you been on the road the last 3 years against a division and opponent in prime? Have they hosted it? Like all that goes into this soup of consideration. We have more international games, got to manage that and travel and in and around that, which is incredibly exciting this year. It's a great process. And again, I'm proud and be able to really inherit and take from Howard what he built and with Mike, who really leads this and continue to build that. It's an incredibly great team that I'm fortunate to work with and tackle that challenge every year.